USA Warrior Stories is a not-for-profit organization designed to record, archive, and share videos of veteran stories, to help veterans make a connection with one another and to help us all better understand their sacrifices for our freedoms.
My name is Frank Joseph Scolaro Jr. I was born in Tampa, Florida at MacDill Air Force Army Hospital. My father was stationed there after he had been in Pearl Harbor, and he was fishing in Pearl Harbor when the attack came. He rode ashore, and he was a crew chief on a B-17, tried to get it out of line, but they shot his tail off. And after he finished his service, we moved back. The family was from Staten Island. We moved to Staten Island when I was a kid. And then later on, we moved to Deer Park, and that's basically where I grew up from 8 years old on. Let's see, I grew up there. When I graduated after high school, I became a carpenter apprentice. My father was a foreman, and my friend's father was the business agent. No problem. Vietnam had just barely started, right? And if you were a carpenter apprentice, you were treated like a college student. You got a 2S deferment. So I said, oh, I'll take the 2S deferment. I figured that the war would be over by then, 4 years, but it wasn't. And I got drafted, and later I found out in New York State, if you were married by the end of August in 1965, they didn't draft you because you were married. I got married on September 3rd, so I got drafted.
So you just missed it?
I just missed it. I didn't know, but I didn't even know about it. I would have got married earlier if I knew about it.
Okay, so you get what was it like when you got the draft letter in the mail?
Was a thick letter like this that says, greetings, you've been, selective service has chosen you, and report to, I had to go to Whitehall Street for a physical. And then a couple of weeks later, they said, all right, you got to go to Fort Hamilton in Brooklyn. And then everybody lined up and said your oath. And everybody in the front line, take one step forward. You are now U.S. Marines. And those poor guys, because they're going to have a U.S. number. The regular Army was RA. U.S. meant you were drafted. And most everybody in the Marines is voluntary. And these poor guys got drafted into the Marines, so I guess they caught hell over there. Then after that, that was 8 weeks. They sent me to put me on an airplane, first time I flew. What the heck was that for? Oh, Fort Polk, Louisiana. And I had no idea what it was going to be. I was already a carpenter. I figured they'd put me in construction, but no. We pulled up to Fort Polk, Louisiana, and there's a billboard that says, welcome to Fort Polk, birthplace of the combat infantrymen for Vietnam. Oh no. I took my cigarettes, I gave them away. I never smoked again. I wanted to be in the best shape I could be in. I didn't want to be craving cigarettes when I couldn't have them. And then there's the old story of 3 on the match. Third guy gets shot.
Wait, what's that story?
First guy lights a cigarette, right? The second guy lights his, and by that time the enemy has zeroed in on you, and the third guy to get licked gets shot.
Wow.
So we did away with that. So we did this training it was 1967, and they made a movie about it. It's called Tigerland, which is what they called it. And these pictures here are all from Tigerland. That's training for, and it has stuff like, let's see, your brother tigers are here. Fight like a tiger and win. Year of the Tiger, 1967. Tigerland. The enemy Viet Cong. And then they had a church, and I was kneeling outside the church. And I don't even know what that sign was. It has an eagle on it. But the training was really good there, and it actually saved my life.
How did your family feel about you getting drafted?
They weren't too happy about it. They were very concerned. I have pictures here of when I'm at the airport in JFK knowing I'm going to Vietnam, and the family came to see me off and the whole thing like that. And my mother's crying, and it was hard. My wife is pregnant. I went back to work, and some jerk on a job says to me, "Are you going to Vietnam?" "Yeah." "You know, you might not make it back."
Wow.
And the guy, all the other guys on the job just came down on him, screaming and yelling, "What are you, crazy, telling the kid something like that?"
Yeah.
And so then I got on a plane, JFK. They flew me to Fort Lewis, Washington, where it's cold and rainy all the time. And they gave us a steak meal. I was there a couple of days. Then they put us on a commercial airline that flew up to Alaska, refueled, and then flew directly to Vietnam. And there were stewardesses on it and everything. I guess they released them out. And we landed in a very secure area called Cam Ranh Bay. And we spent about 3 or 4 days there until they figure out what they're going to do with you, that kind of thing. And we go outside at night, and they had drive-in movies for us. They had bunks for us. They had 3 meals a day. It was like a vacation. I got a picture of it someplace. Oh, here's me hammering. Make believe I'm hammering on a boardwalk there on a board. It was very secure. You're going to be assigned to the 1st Air Cavalry, right? And they flew us up to On K, which was the base camp for 1st Cav. And there, they sent us to a week of jungle school, where you'd go out with with the gun, live ammunition, into the fields, into the jungle, and they would teach you what to do and what not to do and what to look out for. And they also had a rappelling tower. We learned how to rappel out of a plane, out of a helicopter. And that's what really saved my life, was the jungle training, the jungle school for a week. And after the jungle school was over, they flew us up to Da Nang. And from Da Nang, they took you and they put you on a helicopter and flew you out to a company in the field. And the 6 of us from jungle school went to the same company, the same squad. And the sergeant said, "Thank God you guys are here." And I said, "Why is that, Sarge?" He says, "You replaced the 6 guys that got killed yesterday." Now, we were out in the field. We have nowhere where we were at. We were just privates. You had no need to know where you were at, where you were going. You just listened to commands. And about a half hour later, they said, "Put on your battle gear. We're going into a hot LZ." Hot LZ means they're going to be firing at you as you come in. They soften up. It was on top of a hill. They softened it up with artillery. But when we come in, the Viet Cong or the Vietnamese are still there, and they're shooting at us. And the choppers came in. We're out on the rails, on the skids. He comes in about 3 feet high. You jump off, and you're in the battle, right? I jump off. The guy behind me, shot in the head. First day in the field. Pick him up, throw him back on the helicopter. Helicopters take off. We're in a firefight. My M16 jams. Back then, in '67, they hadn't yet chromed the chamber and changed the powder in the ammunition. So I was able to get through that firefight with no weapon. And when the enemy finally pulled back, we dug foxholes. It was very hard. It was hard pan on top. We dig a little chute in the side in case a hand grenade lands. You throw it in and shoot right away so you don't get direct blast. The next day I told the sergeant, "I don't want this. I don't want the M16. He says, "What do you want?" I said, "What do you got?" He says, "I'll give you a grenade launcher." I said, "Yeah, all right. I'll take a grenade. I got a grenade launcher and a 45. Now I had 2 weapons, right? So at least one jams. I got the other one. Next week, everybody got new M16s with the chrome chamber and the new ammunition. But he says, "You want to?" I said, "No, I'm good. I'll stay with the grenade launcher." So, and then after that, it was like constant, every day going out on patrol, looking for the enemy, search and destroy. Typical day, we had a hot meal flown into us. I mean, like sausage, eggs, oatmeal, anything you wanted. have a hot meal flown into us. We'd eat, and then we put on our battle gear, your helmet. We always formed the perimeter at night, and you took your ponchos and you snapped them together, and you made a little tent, you and your buddy, and then you leave most of your stuff there. You just take out your gun, your helmet, and your ammunition, and you'd go through the jungle looking for enemy. Well, we did get some time off, but the time off was that you pulled guard duty on a fire base. So you always had to worry about getting attacked at the fire base. But we go out on night ambushes, listening posts, 3-man listening posts. You go out about a thousand yards from the perimeter, right? And they had quad 50 calibers on all 4 corners of the fire base, and they'd lay down a field of fire on both sides of you, so if you get attacked at night, they know where you are, so you don't get shot, and they could protect you. We went on a night ambush, and then you go out at twilight, right? Which is a night ambush. You go out at twilight, and once you go out, you can't come back in until it's daylight, in case there's any enemy soldiers with you or something like that. So you have to wait till you go back. We go through this cornfield that had already been harvested. It was just the furrows. There's a big rice paddy, and there's a heavily traveled trail that goes into the jungle. We go into the jungle, I'd say about a quarter of a mile. All right, let's set up an ambush. We're all on one side. We're setting up this ambush that set flares on either end of our position. The Vietnamese walk into it as we're setting up. Now, all hell breaks loose. They're shooting at us. We're shooting at them. We're throwing hand grenades at them. And they retreat, and the ones that got wounded are laying off the side of the road. And when we walked in, I was last in line, so I was always turning around looking behind me, right? So gather everything up, and let's get out of here. And they start walking deeper into the jungle. Then the sergeant says, wait a second, we're going the wrong way. We got to go back. Now I'm first in line. And I got to go past this spot where we just interrupted our ambush, and you could hear the wounded Viet Cong moaning in the jungle off the path. Now we can't go back. We go back, and we go to that cornfield, and I think it was only 9 of us, and we lay down like this with our weapon across our and just lay there and wait for it to get light out. Now our sister company gets attacked. They're calling for illumination flares. Illumination flares are going right over us and lighting up the whole position. We break radio silence and get those flares off of us, right? And they stop the flares. We're laying there in the rain, like this, in the furrows, and we see a whole company of Vietnamese regulars walk right past us. They're about 150 feet away from us. And it was just around dusk, dawn. They're joking and laughing, not knowing that we're right there, right? And we can't shoot at them. It's a whole company of them. It's only 9 of us. We're just laying like this, and we're hoping that they don't see us. And they're just fooling around and laughing and joking. They don't notice us there at all. And they go past us, gets light out. Whew, we go back to the perimeter. I'll tell you about how the training saved my life. And there's a picture here. Let me see if I can find it. This picture right here. It's like an obelisk, so it's like about 16 feet high, right? And it was near a road, a dirt road, and you can see that our tracked vehicles had been there because you see the track signs, right? And on that obelisk it says, "Imperialist Yankees get out." That's what it said on it, right? So I'm walking on the side of the road because I'm afraid there might be a booby trap in the road, right? And I'm on the side of the road, and in the sand, there's this round brass something, right? But it was like it had been covered over with plastic and sand, but the rain had washed half of it away. And I cocked my foot back. I was going to just like clear it away to see what it was, and it rung out in my head. Don't touch anything if you don't know what it is. And I learned that at jungle school, right? I backed away, called in the sergeant. He took one look at it, and he got on the radio, and he called in the bomb squad. The bomb squad took a look at it. They said, oh, walk about a half-mile away and break for lunch, right? So we did that. We're breaking for lunch, and we hear this huge explosion. What I found was a 500-pound bomb that we dropped that didn't go off. And if I stepped on it, it had a 2.5-pound pressure fuse on it. If I stepped on it, it would have blown up the whole platoon. So that saved my life that day. Let me tell you about they're called the Sabre Mission, okay? Sabre Mission was like a platoon to go out, right? And there's suspicion of there's enemies in the area, right? And a helicopter would fly over and spot the enemy and radio us and let us know where they are and tell us to go get them, right? So this helicopter pilot spots one Vietcong with an AK-47, right? Tells us to go get it. Now we were going to the area where he's at, and then he realizes that we're coming after him, and he runs into this garden and hides, right? And we don't know where he's at, and it's a platoon of us, right? We walk into the garden, about a squad of us get in there, right? And from about 30 feet away, he opens up on us with an AK-47. But we had already walked, part of the crew had already walked past him, and he was in between us, right? We all hit the ground. The machine gunner, this guy was so cool. He can't shoot him with the machine gun because he's between us, right? He pulls out his 45, boom, shoots him in the head. Blew off half his head. Oh my God, thank you so much. Thanksgiving Day, we're up on a plateau, right? And we circle up, we dig our foxholes, we put our tents up, and some colonel's flying over, and he sees 2 Viet Cong with AK-47s on their shoulders, walking their water buffaloes in the rice paddy. And he lands, and he tells our captain, send a squad down there, get those 2 Viet Cong. Now, it's Thanksgiving Day. They flew in everything, just like you would have in a dinner at home. And they came in mermite cans, these 5-gallon cans of all kinds of food and everything. I mean, it was unbelievable. And we're sitting there eating, all right, you guys have been picked to go down and get those 2 Viet Cong. Oh, no, you got to be kidding me. All right, put on your battle gear. I had the AK-47. I carried a half a gross of grenades on my back. In one of these pictures, you could see the size of here. This picture here, you could see the size of the sack that I carried with me. It was a half a gross of grenades, high explosive grenades, for the M79 grenade launcher. We go down the mountain, walk over to the rice paddy. And it was a really big rice paddy, and there was a little narrow ledge on one side of it with a heavily traveled path, and to the left there was jungle, hills and a jungle and hills, right? We walk down there, and sure enough, there's 2 Vietnamese with the AK-47s. They see us, we see them, and they're quite a bit away from us, like maybe 2 football fields away from us, right? And they go off the trail and to the side. The sergeant said, Frankie, lay down a couple of grenades over there. And I had gotten pretty good with the grenade launcher. You use it like a mortar, right? And boom, right where they were. Boom, right where they were. All right, go get them. My buddy's walking point. I'm second, right? There's a big rock on the side of this rice paddy, right? He takes one step past the rock and goes, half a clip. One of the Viet Cong was crouched down behind that rock, waiting to ambush us with his AK-47. He shot his head in half, and he shot the gun in half. And then he says to me, Frankie, look at this. There's a blood trail leading up the hill. You got the other guy with the grenade launcher. We follow the blood trail. It goes into a tunnel. They had friggin' tunnels all over the place. Goes into a tunnel, right? We pull out a hand grenade, throw a hand grenade down the tunnel. All right, let's go back and eat Thanksgiving dinner. So that was Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah. What was Christmas like?
Christmas was nice. Christmas picture.
Yeah, the Christmas picture, yeah, we saw that before.
Yeah.
I love that.
Santa, we were on top of a hill, right? We dug in on top of a hill. Santa Claus came in Christmas morning, brought us some mail. But I was on guard duty up there on top of that mountain or hill, and everybody fall asleep. It was like about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I hear activity coming up the hill. I take a hand grenade out, I throw it down the hill, and then I hear the scurrying away. They were trying to sneak up on our opposition. That one person asked me, why was that hand grenade thrown? They were all sleeping. I was the only one that knew we were trying to be attacked.
How did you feel about the war itself?
I couldn't understand it. You know, they told us that we're there to fight communism, right? So we're killing people all over the place. I mean, it was sad. We used to do things like we'd fly into a little village, right? And we'd put all the people from that village. It was no military age men, right? It was women, children, and old men, right? This old man ran into like a tunnel, it was a tunnel that you could crouch down. He had dug it as in the side of a hill, and I went in there with the 45 to get him out, right? And come on, Lade, that means come on, get out of here. And I got him out, and the guy is shaking and he's crying, and I forgot to cock the 45. It's, shit, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going in there. But we would take all these people and put them on a Chinook helicopter, like 50, 60 people, right? Women, children, and old men. Put them on, and once they left, we'd burn down their huts, kill the livestock, and what they called it a free fire zone. Now you got no people there, no livestock, and no huts anymore, right? And anything that moved was your enemy. So that was the logic behind that. But I mean, all these people are crying. They don't want to leave their homes. It was so sad. I'll tell you about when I got wounded. All right. They had information that one of the fire bases was going to be attacked. And it was in a valley, and there was a string of hills like overlooking it. So they put us up there so they couldn't come over the hill to attack them and have the advantage of being able to shoot down on them, right? So they realized that we were there, and they swept around us, and they attacked the fire base, and they didn't get through because they called in Puff the Magic Dragon, which I think was a C-47 cargo plane with Gatling guns inside. And C-47 would come in and just circle around the fire base and just lay down a rain of fire all the way around, right? When he was out of ammunition, he'd pull out another one and come in. And the next day, they found a whole bunch of Viet Cong or Vietnamese dead, but none of them made it through the Paperna. So, and the next day, we went out on patrol. And my buddy's walking point, and I'm second. And we're on the side of the hill, and we're what they call a wet weather stream. If it was raining, the water would be running down here, so it was a little easier to walk through there. And he's about maybe 15 feet ahead of me. He goes, "Frank, be quiet. I heard something." "What you hear?" Ba-boom. What he heard was a hand grenade that landed between us. He fell on his face. The blast picked me up and threw me on my back. Everybody else pulled back. I'm saying to you, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" No answer, right? I hear clunk. Another hand grenade lands about 10 feet away from me, and it goes poof. It was a dud. Thank God it was a dud. All right, the other guys, they start calling me, "Frank, are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm okay." I said, "But get up here." I said, "Beetle's turning purple." His name was James Alvin Bailey, and we called him Beetle Bailey. And they tried to revive him, and he's turning purple, and he got hit in the temple with a piece of shrapnel, and he didn't make it. All right. They said to me, "Are you okay? Can you go back on patrol?" I said, "Yeah, sure, I'm fine." I go to stand up, I can't stand up. One guy he says to me, "Hey, Frank, here's your wristwatch." I said, "My wristwatch? Where'd you get my wristwatch?" He said, "Laying here on the ground." I got hit with a piece of shrapnel here. Broke my wrist. The shrapnel is still in here. It shot the watch off my wrist. It was a skin diver calendar watch that my parents sent me that stopped. I have the time and the date.
That's amazing. That's incredible, Frank.
All right?
Yeah.
This was 10:40 on January 6th. Okay? So that's how I remember January 6th.
There you go.
All
I was
right?
about to say that's enough to make me believe in God, but that's funny.
So they said, can you go back on patrol? I go, yeah. I go to stand up. I can't stand up, right? So they said, all right, they called in a chopper, right? Now the chopper can't land because it's on the side of a hill. They send down a harness. They put a harness on me, and they start hurling me up while the chopper's hovering. I'm dangling under a chopper where I just got wounded, and we know there's enemy all over the place, and I'm worried about getting shot out of the air or the chopper getting shot down. Right? They pull me in. I get into the Huey. I take my helmet off. I sit on my helmet in case any bullets are coming up, and they put the harness back down again, and they had a hard time getting it onto the other guy who was dead. He couldn't cooperate with them, and they finally get him up, and we zoom off. And we go to a MASH unit in the field. I have no idea where it was. And they bring me into the operating room and they cut off my clothes, and I find out why I couldn't walk. I was wounded in both legs, my abdomen, my chest, and up and down my left arm. And so from there, I spent the night there. And that's when they gave me the Purple Heart. They flew me down to Cam Ranh Bay, which was that very secure area where I came in. And there's a hospital there. So I was in the hospital, they bandaged me up, and they said, kept me there about 3 or 4 days, and they were gonna fly me to Japan to get operated on. And when I got there, a woman came around, and she was a social worker, and she says, I'm here with my husband, who's the surgeon he's gonna operate on you. I just came to interview you and see how you're doing. I said, oh, I'm doing fine. So she says, what happened? And it was the surgeon that's going to operate on me is an Italian doctor from New York. So she takes my information. She notices my wedding band. She says, oh, you're married? I said, yeah. You have any kids? My wife's expecting a baby. All right, my husband he's going to come around and talk to you. So the whole medical team comes around and they're talking to me. He says, hey, Frankie, I hear you're having a baby. I said, yeah. He says, you got some pretty serious wounds there. How'd you like to be home for that? I said, oh, I would love to be home for that. And so they took me, they operated on me. They took out most of the shrapnel, not all. It's still in my wrist. I had little pieces coming out here and there, out of my ear. I got a chunk coming out of the back of my leg. It finally came to the surface. And they sent me to Walson Army Hospital in Fort Dix, New Jersey. Then my family could come and visit me. And I went home on convalescent leave. They gave me a 30-day convalescent leave. And my son was born while I was home on leave. So I drove my wife to the hospital. We waited. We got the son. Then I had to come back. And so I got my brother-in-law was going to drive me back to Fort Dix, New Jersey, right? He says, we'll stop in the morning, we'll get something to eat. I said, okay, good. He's driving me back to Fort Dix, and I'm getting sick. And I'm getting sicker and sicker and sicker. Like I couldn't stand it anymore. I says, oh, I'm sorry, I can't go to breakfast. I have to go to the hospital. So now, they accept me in the hospital, and they take my temperature like 104.5 or something like that, right? But they had put me on a medical ward. People are going to get operated on, and the doctor comes in and says, why do you put this guy in this ward? These people are all getting, you don't know what's causing that fever that he has, right? And so they figured out what it was. It was malaria. When you're in Vietnam, you get a little pill every day. And then on Monday, you took a little white pill every day. And then on Monday, you took a big orange pill. And that, if you had malaria, it stopped it from breaking out, right? When I got wounded, I never took any more malaria pills. And then finally it broke out when I was returning to the hospital. Now, I was freezing. I couldn't stand light. I couldn't stand ears. They were just about to put me in ice because my fever was so high. And then the fever broke. So, and they nursed me back from that. And then I went home on convalescent leave again. So, after that, they had me working in the hospital doing some inventory or some crap like that, right? And the colonel sees me limping. He says to me, "What happened to you, son?" And I tell him what happened. He says, "Do you have a medical profile?" I said, "I don't even know what that is." He says, "Come to my office." And he has his secretary type out this medical profile for me and gives me 4 copies, and the colonel signs it, right? This man's been wounded in Vietnam. He's not subject, he can't do any marching, prolonged standing, no heavy lifting, a whole list of things that I couldn't do. Thank you, sir. So
It's your lucky day.
So I get shipped down to Fort Hood, Texas, and they put you in a holding company to figure out what they're going to do with you. And I walk in, I got a limp, I'm hurting all over. And the sergeant in charge says to me, "What happened to you, son?" I tell him I got wounded in Vietnam. I show him the medical profile. He says, "I don't know what the hell I'm going to do with you." So next day I go, he says, "You come report to me in the morning." I said, "Okay." So I go report to him in the morning, and he says, "I got a job for you." I said, "What is it?" He says, "You're the day room orderly." That's where they play pool and watch TV. So that was my job for 6 months, playing pool with the captain and watching TV and sweeping up and doing that. Until then they came out with this thing called Project Transition, where they train you for a civilian job. Now, I was already carpenter, but I got to know if I could do that work anymore. So I said, "I want to be an electrician." They said, "Okay." And they put me with this guy. His name was Mr. Rhodes. They called him Dusty Rhodes. He was a civilian that worked on doing the maintenance on Fort Hood. And I would go with him, and he was an electrician. And we go change a fuse or change a switch, a couple little jobs like that. You get a worksheet. And after I do it 3, 4 jobs, I said, "Yeah, go home to your wife and baby." My wife and baby had come down to Texas to see me.
Oh, that's nice.
And then when I got out, we flew back on the plane, but there was so much controversy at that time about, everybody was against the soldiers. I mean, we got drafted. I didn't want no part of that war. And baby killer and all of this stuff. So on the plane, I got out of my uniform and put on my civilian clothes so I wouldn't be harassed when I got off the plane.
Remember what it was like when you first came home as far as like transitioning back?
It wasn't bad because I was doing that transition work. I was working with the electrician for 3 months, so it wasn't. In fact, when I went to get my pay, I had grown a beard, my hair was long, and people didn't know who I was. The cadre had changed in that unit, and they're saying, "Who the hell is this guy?" They thought I was CID or something. I go there and salute in civilian clothes with a beard and get my paycheck, and they didn't know who I was. But the day before I was going to muster out, an MP says to me, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm Private so-and-so." He says, "Well, how'd you grow that beard?" I said, "I've been working with the civilians." He said, "Well, you can't walk around with a beard." I said, "Well, I'm getting out tomorrow. Not unless you shave that beard off." I said, "Son of a bitch." He made me shave it off before I could get out. And when you get short, you take a deck of cards and you throw a card away every day, right? When you're down to 52 days. And on the last day, as we go out the gate and I pass the guard, I'm on a bus, right? I throw the ace of spades out of it and I'm out of here.